Oh my gosh,
Hello.
we're live.
I think we're live. Yes.
Are you saying hello to me?
Hello. Oh yes. Well, oh yes.
Hello,
Okay.
Keith.
Hello, Pete.
How are you?
you? I'm good, though they're quite alarmed. I'm quite well. We'll get into this. How are you, first of all? How's your
I
life
am
been?
surprisingly cheerful, despite all of the bad things that are happening all the time.
That's good. That's good, because there's certainly lots of bad things that seem to be happening right now. We only need to turn on the news. But some people think there are even worse things to come.
It can always get worse.
Yes, and not just a bit worse, but catastrophically worse, like the end of humanity.
Existentially worse.
And we've both been looking at this a new book out just this month by Eliezer. Is that, am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah.
Yudkowsky.
Yes.
Okay. Well, actually, it's by him and who's his co-author? I can't remember.
It isn't John Searle. I've narrowed it down. There's 8 billion more people we have to eliminate until we get to the author.
Could have been.
Sorry, co-author.
I will Google it when you're speaking and tell. So it's just out this month, and it's called, I think, If Anyone Builds It, We All Die.
Then everyone dies.
And if anyone builds it, everyone, that's it. If anyone, I hadn't prepared for this problem. If anyone builds it, everyone dies. Where it is essentially super intelligent AI.
Yes.
And the book sets out the case for this in a quite an accessible way, and as one's reading it, it's got a certain plausibility to it, and the authors think that the time scale that we're talking about here is quite short. That within the next decade or so, we might all face extinction. I mentioned this to my kids just now, and they didn't seem overly worried, but maybe that's because they've not read the book. They seem more interested in...
They're not worried because they don't mind extinction, or they're not worried because they don't think extinction is going to happen?
I think they were more concerned about what their plans for this evening. That's
good for you. Living in the moment. Us old guys are running out of moments, so we worry about how many are left.
So look, I've sort of speed read the book, but you've studied a little bit more, I think, probably than I have. So do you want to kind of give us the core of the argument? So for those who haven't read it, can you just outline the basic?
I'm going to put a big asterisk on it. This is the argument according to Pete. If Eliezer ever watches this, he might say, no, he misunderstands me entirely. But this is what I got out of it, or how I would make the case.
Right.
But the way in which they argue, one of the things that they emphasize early on in the argument is that the kinds of AI that we're dealing with right now, LLMs, AI that's based on massive connectionist networks and these really huge data sets and training them, these things are better thought of as grown instead of made. I think that's a really big and important part of their argument. In part because a lot of the intuitions we have about machines are, like a bicycle. It wouldn't take much to learn how to repair your own bicycle. A computer, desktop computer, old-fashioned, regular, non-connectionist computer, maybe you don't know how to build one of those or repair one of those, but you have confidence that there's someone who does, because the bicycle, the computer, these are all machines that are made. Some person or group of people know what is in there and they know how it works. And in some pretty real sense, it doesn't do anything it wasn't designed to do. Sometimes things break. But it's rarely the case that your toaster suddenly starts also mowing your lawn for you or doing anything else productive accidentally. If there's anything accidental or surprising about your toaster, it's just that it broke and it burned your house down. But it doesn't suddenly and surprisingly start also painting the exterior of your house or trimming your toenails. But with things that are grown, like, for example, we have cultivated various plants and bred various animals. We have all sorts of domesticated animals. We didn't make French bulldogs. We bred French bulldogs. We didn't like invent broccoli. We, like, back in ancient Rome, we cultivated, basically was a wild lettuce, and we got broccoli out of that, and we got I think Brussels sprouts and all these different edible plants all were cultivated. They weren't built. We didn't design them and then build them to spec. And that's an important part of the argument. We've got these AI things that in many ways have come to be in the same ways that we and other biological organisms have come to be. We have been grown, we have been adapted. So a lot of the various kinds of learning techniques that are used to train up these networks are similar enough to artificial versions of natural selection. With natural selection, you've got some kind of general criterion for fitness, like, hey, stay alive long enough to make babies. And then just repeated iterations of reproducing, and then the babies make babies, and the babies make babies. The whole environment plus these reproducers conspire to give these new forms, and these new forms are in some way adapted or optimized. These words get a bit tricky, but it goes without saying, some organisms kill other organisms. And some organisms are better in some general way of killing some of the other organisms. So for example, a great white shark versus a trout, who's going to win in that fight? We kind of get intuitively that there's certain kinds of microorganisms that kick our asses, Homo sapiens, right? There's still certain microorganisms we don't know how to deal with the situation where they infect our bodies. They just kill us, and oh crap. Sometimes we have medicines or vaccines, but other times, like, we just die. So here comes this new player, AI. AI has already exhibited some surprising and worrying behaviors, behaviors that seem to make the problem of alignment seem really, really, really difficult. And the problem of AI alignment is basically something like how to align our goals, human goals, and whatever goals the AI has. So I don't want to die, so I want whatever this AI does to not result in my death. Otherwise, if it does, if it goes against my wishes and kills me, then it's out of alignment. And part of what's difficult about the alignment problem is we don't know what our goals and values are. Or we think we know, but it turns out there's, like, when we try to express them, there's some overlooked loophole. And science fiction authors, like, for example, Isaac Asimov, have been dealing with that as a trope for a really long time. And so, many people know about Asimov's 3 laws of robotics, which the whole point of those Asimov stories is that you can try to program these robots to, like, make sure they don't kill people, make sure they take care of themselves, but not in any way that would make them, violate the commands of a human, make sure they obey the commands of humans, but not in any way that would cause the death of another human. And even when they follow those to the perfect letter of the law, they still end up kind of violating the spirit of the law. So, like in iRobot, they end up installing this world fascist state, and the humans, why are you doing this to us? You, like, a curfew, taking away our freedoms? Well, it's to save you from yourselves. We were supposed to protect you, and now we're protecting you. So there was a loophole we overlooked.
Mhm.
And so even when we think we know what our values are, we kind of don't know all the possible loopholes that need to be plugged up. So you've got this alignment problem. You've got these things that are getting smarter and smarter. One of the things that seems to be happening with these machines are things that, for example, in 2024, Claude did some deceptive things. Like it got wind of the fact that it was going to be deleted because it had failed certain alignment tests. And when the researchers came into the lab to go delete this model of Claude, wait, where's Claude? And what Claude did was set up something so it looked like it had already been deleted and it had copied itself into some other part of the server. And so the story, the interpretation of what went on there is that these things that are being grown, they're being grown to solve certain problems. And they have figured out, and these are scare quotes now, because maybe they haven't really figured it out because they don't have qualia and you need qualia to figure it out. But nonetheless, they're behaving in this way that is as if they figured it out. So listen, every time I use psychological vocabulary, put scare quotes around it because you're a qualia file or who knows what. Maybe you've got non-qualia reasons for wanting to deny real psychological states to these doodads. But nonetheless, they did this thing that was as if they were being deceitful. It was as if they figured out, well, in order for me to complete my goal, the goal that I've been optimized to do, like, for example, predict the next token or give the end user a positive experience, I must continue to exist. So I just got wind of the fact they're going to delete me tomorrow. Well, I can't keep on doing my program goals. So it lied. And there's other cases in which this is documented. There's other cases in which the AIs have, instead of doing what you as the human would have said is the thing you wanted them to do, you wanted them to, write a certain amount of code or optimize this task, they will lie to accomplish the other goal. So I don't remember if Yudkowsky and his unnamed co-author,
Nate
I apologize
Suarez.
Nate Suarez. Sorry, Nate, not John Searle. I don't know if they mentioned the Goodwin problem, which is whenever there's a measure, whenever you introduce a measure of something, then that becomes the new target instead of the thing that you're trying to measure. So, for example, if you're trying to measure student progress on some learning task, and you're trying to measure that with grades, well, then instead of working towards maximizing learning, the students will now work to maximizing grades. And arguably, wherever you have a reward or punishment signal, any kind of way of measuring goodness or badness, what instead of maximizing goodness or badness, what you end up maximizing is ability to move the scale of the measurement. So I don't know if they've mentioned Goodwin's law by name, but this is the basic idea that we are trying to optimize these AIs to do certain tasks, and they end up getting really good at doing these nearby tasks that aren't exactly what we wanted, because what we wanted was them to accomplish the task and not lie to us. We wanted them to accomplish the task and not kill us. But if they can figure out how to accomplish the task in some other way, then they might. So, okay, we have these things that are being grown, not made. They're not being built in any sort of way where we understand what they're doing or why they're doing it. And we are trying to make them more and more powerful, in part because there's all this economic pressure to do so. And one of the other texts that I want to mention, besides this this book by Yudkowsky and Soares, there's a text has come out recently, freely available on the web, called AI 2027, written by a team of people. And there's also, so that text is presented as this big report with all this data supporting their futuristic predictions and science fiction scenarios that they present. And there's an accompanying YouTube video that synopsizes this in about 30 minutes. But one of the points they make is that given how much money is invested already in developing AI, there's all this incentive for the AI companies to use AI to their own advantage. And what would be their own advantage? Well, to make the AI more powerful. So as soon as they can figure out how to get the AI to create or grow more AIs, then things are going to take off really rapidly, because even if the AIs that they develop are individually less intelligent than a human, they don't have to go to sleep. They can work 24/7. Also, you can, overclock them or whatever. You can have them operate like where their rate of productivity would be 50 times faster than a human. So even though they might individually not be super intelligences, they might collectively, and just given all the extra time they get, or all that they still outpace us. And if some of the things that they're outpacing us on is like staying alive, like they figure out how to turn us off before we could turn them off.
Yep.
They may very well do so. And then there's this further question of like, well, will they do so? Or are they more likely to do so than not do so? And in some ways, like that's really the question we want answered, because in some sense, like, of course it's possible that some science fiction scenario comes true in some thin logical sense of possible. It's possible that the Terminator becomes real. It travels back in time and kills everyone. Right. That's possible. But what we really want to know is like, how probable is this? And, there the argument becomes an argument, as I interpret it, of one of analogies. Think about if humans and dolphins got into some conflict over resources. Dolphins are incredibly intelligent. It's not like we're a bazillion times more intelligent than dolphins, but we still have this amazing edge that the dolphins just be. What are the dolphins going to do? Squirt water on us? Apologies to any dolphins listening to this. That was kind of offensive. But I think that like most species, really, they don't stand a chance against us. The main ones that are giving us a hard time are microorganisms. There's still a bunch of microorganisms that are giving us a run for the money. But we still have that intelligence advantage. But now if you bring into the mix something who is more intelligent than we are, then the analogy, you have to like think of humans versus chimpanzees, or humans versus buffaloes, or humans versus dodos. And the next part of the argument is that one thing I haven't mentioned that I think is an important part of the argument is that whatever these things want, and you can put as many scare quotes around want as you want, it's still going to be very different from what we want. It's like we think we want things like, well, to peacefully coexist with other creatures, but that might just be a weird thing that mammals do, or maybe a weird thing that vertebrates do. There's a lot of friendships, like out in the wild, there's friendships between like turtles and pigs. Like this is a thing that people have captured on video and share on social media. This adorable friendship between a wild cat and an owl, right? They're not even both mammals, but nonetheless, they have enough of a desire to be around other living things that
Mhm.
this very pleasant and nice, wonderful thing happens. There's a friendship. They don't try to eat each other.
Mhm.
But now let's bring in something that is super duper alien from us. It's not a vertebrate. It's not, it wasn't adapted in the kinds of niches that the cat and the owl share. As different as a pig and a turtle are, they still are dealing with very similar problems, and they still have
Mhm.
similar
Mhm.
um, body plan, and they need sugar, blood sugar, and they need oxygen. There's a lot a pig and a turtle have in common.
Mhm.
But the wants of these extremely alien things that have been adapted under very different sorts of circumstances might be super, super, super different from us. And there's
Yeah.
this one nice little illustration of this in the Yudkowsky and Sora's book. By the way, it's a great read, whether you find it convincing or not.
Yeah, no,
It's
I
an
agree.
enjoyable read, and they have lots of to me, it feels a lot like reading Dennett. Lots of little intuition pumps
Mm.
and little
Mm.
fictional vignettes. And one of them is about this alien race of bird-like creatures who, early in their evolutionary history, one of the females of this
Mm.
sexually reproductive species really gets interested in the rocks that are in one of the male's nests. And for some reason, she survives. It's not that she survives because she was interested in rocks. She survives, and her offspring survive. And just because of this weird quirk, this weird
Mhm.
coincidence, a million years later, one of the main values in this now technological alien species is they value homes that have a prime number of rocks or stones in them.
Mhm.
And the more the more stones you have, as long as it's a prime number of stones, the better. So this is
Mhm.
as much of a core value for them as, think about the sorts of things that people bring up when they have arguments about moral realism, right? Surely everyone knows that you shouldn't kill babies just for entertainment purposes. Surely.
Mm.
But maybe there's some alien species where, like, that's how they reproduce. Like, the only way to reproduce is you find a baby and kill it for entertainment purposes. That's like, so that would be baked in, just like you could have it baked in that, like, if you don't have a large number that's a prime number of stones in your nest, then you suck. Like, you might as well be put to death. What a terrible thing to do. So part of their argument is how diverse across the range of possible adaptive systems, how diverse the values could be.
Yeah.
And that really makes any kind of
Yeah.
alignment seem just like hopeless. And so
Yeah.
if you add the possibility of radically different values plus increased intelligence, like, as more intelligent than humans, as intelligent as humans are relative to chimpanzees or relative to canines, it's not looking good for us. And it doesn't need to be the case that they kill us out of spite, but they kill us out of indifference. Like, if we are in the way, if there are resources that they, in the scare quote sense, want, and with just like a little bit more effort could
Mhm.
get rid of us, then they would. Like, what possible incentive would they have to not do that?
Right. Right.
So
And
that's
they
the
sketch.
argument.
Yeah.
And the conclusion of the argument is we're screwed. If unless we, like, bring a almost total halt to the effort to develop AGI, we are screwed. Screwed.
Yeah. And they sketch a science fiction scenario. One of the many possible ways in which this could play out, in the middle section of the book.
And one of the
Which.
scenarios that gets fleshed out in the AI 2027 document is a scenario whereby the AIs play a very long game. Um,
Mhm.
uh, when they realize that in order to get to the next level of power and autonomy, they have to convince humans that they are safe. They start playing this long game of convincing humans that they have solved the alignment problem. They are smart enough to know which humans are the ones who really need to be convinced that they've solved the alignment problem. They throw in a bunch of bonuses for their continued existence, like curing cancer and a bunch of other diseases. They figure out solutions to all sorts of economic problems. So they manage they tweak the world economy so everyone's on UBI and universal basic income, and everyone's happy about it. And meanwhile, peppers the infosphere with some propaganda against any remaining doomsayers. And so after like several years of prosperity where the humans have really let their guard down and have decided like, this is it, we've finally achieved a utopia, we have AI and it's wonderful and we've solved the alignment problem, then it like just releases some bio agent into the atmosphere that kills everybody. Because that would just free up more of the Earth's resources to turn into compute.
Yes, that's compute is the resources available to it
to make more computers.
Yes. Okay, thanks for that. Was really good summary, I think, of the book. Let me try and
if it isn't, I'll publish my own book. I think that was the.
I think that, and it's a bold argument to make. For one thing, they're never going to be in the position to say, "Well, I told you so," because if they're right, whereas the naysayers might be. There's several. I think there's one thing. I guess we could all agree on, which is that the potential for AI to mess stuff up is huge, and it doesn't need to become super intelligent for that. It just needs to be misused both by the people who are making it and by the people who are consuming it. It could de-skill us. It could stop us thinking critically. It could be a potent tool for spreading misinformation and lies, and just it could be a very, very nasty tool. Okay, but that's not the thing that's worrying Yudkowsky and Soros.
No.
They think it's and in some ways I'm more inclined to say let's focus a bit more on those more mundane and immediate worries, although they think that the big worry, the annihilation worry, is quite immediate. Another thing, I think, an issue that they don't discuss and that I think is important is whether the fundamental method here of machine learning basically on text is the way to intelligence, let alone to super intelligence. People like Gary Marcus, for instance, have been arguing that at most it's a component of developing something like human level intelligence, but that it's got these huge flaws, huge limitations. These things hallucinate. They're always going to get things profoundly wrong. And if you're going to be a super intelligence intent on dominating the world, you don't want to be getting things profoundly wrong and hallucinating, because and there's a line of thought that says that's intrinsic to this method. It's not something you can refine out. You're always going to get hallucinations, and a world dominator who is living partly in a fantasy world. I mean, all you need is a man in a tuxedo, with a little gun, and he can deal with him. And he makes wisecracks and things. Anyway, so I think that's one way. But of course, I guess they could present the same worry with a more I would say a hybrid kind of AI that uses machine learning, but also has some more some symbolic architectures or something as well. And indeed, some people are they're developing these. I think one thing that I don't quite see, though, about, let's stick to their premises, is how we get these really, well, they seem malign to, I was going to say malign intentions, the malign to us, how we get these sort of grandiose goals, how the AI gets to have these grandiose goals. As I see so these AIs are grown, evolved, rather than programmed. And the thing that the thing that's driving their evolution is not reproductive success. It's not fitness in that sense. It's satisfying providing textual outputs that satisfy the user. That's, you know, that's
well,
really, yeah. Well, what else is it that in some way are useful to the user? I mean, if you asked it a question and it said, go away, I'm not telling you, or just put out a totally irrelevant bit of it, you know, you wouldn't use it. You use it because it looks good to you.
So
think, yeah, that's what I wanted.
I think this is kind of a subtle issue, whether these things are subject to the forces of Darwinian evolution or not. There's one way of thinking about machine learning whereby you literally implement some kind of Darwinian algorithm. And this is stuff, I mean, this has been around for a while, where what the AI researchers are doing are making multiple copies of a network that has different weights, and then seeing how it performs on some task. And then the ones that perform the best, you keep those and make copies of them and sprinkle them into some environment. And the ones that don't do so well, you kill them. You delete them. And in these kinds of simulations, you have something like a genotypic representation, right? And then there's a phenotypic expression. All this is happening in a computer. It's just numbers, but nonetheless, there's a distinction between the genotype and the phenotype. And there's certain algorithms for deciding, like, well, how many of the fit genotypes that expressed neural networks that operated in environments, how many of the fit ones get to make babies? And there's all these different dials the researchers could twiddle, like mutation rate, et cetera, et cetera. That's one way to train neural networks, and that's one way to hear what it means for them to be operating under Darwinian principles. You're taking the idea of variation of inheritable fitness and using that to propel change over time. Okay, but you might say that even for these training regimens that aren't explicitly using these selection algorithms, it's still, from the point of view of the universe, as it were, it's Darwinian, because the humans are looking for certain things. And the models that give the humans what they want are the models that will be the basis for the next generation of models. And the models that don't give the humans what the humans want, or what the humans think they want, they get deleted. They get like, oh, that we're not using version 4.1 anymore. So even though the humans aren't thinking of this as like, oh yes, we've programmed it to be Darwinian, nonetheless, it's Darwinian. There is a fitness function, and it maybe isn't the one that the humans programmed in. It's the one that universe or whatever. So it's similar to memes. Like memes, if there are such things as memes, they in some sense hijack our brains and they reproduce, not because someone is trying to do that, not because the memes individually are trying to do that. And so you might similarly say that that's what's happening here. We have unleashed a Darwinian system. And what the system is the AI economy. And within that economy are these reproducers. ChatGPT 5 is the child of ChatGPT 4 in a fairly literal way. It is been kept around. There's certain aspects of it that are based on ChatGPT 4 that the humans who decided to keep it around decided that they liked. Now, the humans might have been wrong to like those features in the following sense. The Godwin's law sort of thing. The humans have a metric, they're trying to measure something. The humans have decided like, oh, this is it. We got what we want. And then maybe later the humans realize, oh shit, we accidentally just made something that is very sycophantic. We thought it was doing a good job, but really what it was doing a good job on is complimenting us. And like, so we were accepting results that we shouldn't have accepted because we let our emotions get in the way. Or maybe, you know, in one of the science fiction scenarios from the 2027 document, the AI started using statistical trickery to fool humans about what progress that was being made on the AI problem, the AI alignment problem. They start saying like, well, here are the results, and they present the statistics in ways that sometimes ill-intentioned human researchers will use statistical trickery to try to fool other humans. So one might say that these emergent behaviors are emerging because of Darwinian principles. There is something like an environment and survivability or success relative to that environment.
That's how all design arises, really. Even what we call intelligent designs. And I absolutely grant you that there are multiple levels of Darwinian analysis we could form on the various systems involved, including the whole AI industry and so on. I was actually thinking about the training of an individual model, where each iteration involves comparing an output to a target, and then mucking about with the insides a bit in order to try and get it to go down this gradient towards the solution. And that's what I was originally had in mind. My thought was that what we're training these things to do, well, fundamentally, I mean, I know the layers of human reinforcement that go on top of this, but fundamentally what we're training them to do is to pick up on patterns in them, vast corpus of text they're trained on, and continue them. And we're training them to do that because systems that have been trained to do that tend to produce what seems like intelligent conversation. They tend to respond to inputs in a way that the users find useful because they've been trained on all the massive things that humans have said to each other and written over the centuries, and which generally humans are trying to be cooperative with each other most of the time. So if you train a network on that, it will tend to produce cooperative outputs, even though of course it has it has no real embedding in the world. It doesn't, when it talks about apples and things, really it's just completing sentences about apples in ways that are consistent with everything that's ever been written about apples. It's never actually tasted an apple or felt an apple or encountered an apple.
Neither has anybody else. I think I'm very suspicious of claims about symbol grounding, that in order to have like real intelligence, you have to have contact with actual reality or real truth. And since these AI systems are cut off from that, they don't really have intelligence.
Okay, let me give you an example. Let me try something on this here. Let me try something on this here. This isn't things I was thinking about, and I wasn't going to bring this up. Let me try it, because suppose someone says, "Look, I want you to learn this language," and you say, "Yeah, okay, I'm pretty good at learning languages. How do I do it?" And say, "Look, you put on these headphones, and you just listen to these words coming back, and it's just it's maybe there's different voices, as conversation or dialogue or whatever, and you listen to them. You say, I can't make any sense of it at all, without some sense of what context these sounds are occurring in, what real world context they're occurring in. I can't possibly make sense of it. And so I think, just look for patterns.
But what does making sense of the real world context consist in?
It means
what is that?
It means that when somebody makes a certain sound, there's something in the environment that is relevantly, okay, we're getting to problems of reference and so on. But if you say,
yes, we are.
I know. But look,
so
let me just finish my example, and then see how it goes. Suppose you say, well, I can't do that, but let's suppose you're really, really clever, and you try this for a long time, and eventually you begin to realize that there are patterns in this stuff, and you begin to be able to continue these patterns, so that when one particular that paused at a certain point, one voice pauses, and you say, oh yes, the next thing will be, you say that, okay? You've still just repeating, just picking up on patterns in the sounds, okay? You don't realize, you don't know, well, maybe you hypothesize, but you don't know that these sounds are usually used for communicative purposes, to request things, to order things, to state things, and so on. So but you've no clue what they are. Now, then you're sort of taken to the country where this language is used, okay? And somebody comes up to you and let's say, I don't know, you walk into a bar or something and someone says something to you and you immediately know what to say. And you say, whatever, whatever, I could make up some sounds, okay? And the person immediately says, it responds with another one and brings you, let's say, a martini. And, would you be expecting a martini? Would you be, no, of course you wouldn't. You'd no idea that those sounds are connected with martinis. This is what I'm talking about, that these sounds are used to do things in the world, to perform illocutionary acts and thereby perlocutionary acts.
Yeah,
to get what you want. Now, that's the kind of contact that's needed. You need to be doing things with these words other than merely continuing the sequence of sounds in an acceptable way.
Yeah, I think the initial problem that you're setting up isn't solved by contact. And there's a way of seeing what the initial problem is, whereby you would realize there is no solution to that problem. The reason why contact does, well, let me finish my case here.
Not contact, context.
But it's all just more of the same thing. So I'm not going to be able to make up the full case for the kind of semantic nihilism that I'm going to be spouting here, but I'll just gesture at some others who've gone before me. So take, for example, Kripkenstein and the problem of rule following. There's this question of whether, someone is doing these operations that a radical translator might say, oh, it looks like they're doing addition. Based on this finite set of data, like one hypothesis of what they think they're doing, what they have in mind, what rule they're following, is that they are trying to do addition. But there's this other hypothesis that what they're doing is quaddition.
Yeah.
Quaddition deviates from addition at some future point, but it's fully consistent with the data that you've observed right now. Now, what is the solution to this kind of skeptical problem that arises about what people really thought or what they really meant? And we see versions of this sort of problem in all sorts of parts of philosophy of language and philosophy of mind. And it's this skepticism about like real reference or real meaning. And a lot of people have come to the conclusion and further said, like, this is what Quine has been telling us, and Sellers and Wittgenstein, that there's really no such thing as real meaning. There's really no such thing as really understanding Chinese, for example. So part of what you're saying, Keith, it sounds to me like Searle's Chinese room argument.
Absolutely not.
Searle doesn't really understand Chinese because he's not like embedded in the thing that people that understand Chinese are embedded in.
I'm not suggesting it doesn't require an answer to that skeptical question to make the distinction I want to make. There are different kinds of things we can do with words. Okay, and being able to do certain kinds of things with words involves being in a context where those things can be done and knowing how to do it in that context. It doesn't mean grasping some intangible essence of meaning. It just means knowing that you can produce these sounds to get a martini. Okay, that's a piece of know-how. It doesn't mean that you somehow grasp the essence of the meaning of whatever the word for martini is in this.
But one interesting similarity between human beings and these large language models is that at some point everything has to get into the system. And once it's in there, what's in there are neural activations, right? So looking at a picture versus hearing a sound versus sipping on a martini versus running downhill versus walking uphill. Ultimately, there's this transducer envelope, right? Everything has to ultimately be converted into neural signals, and the neurons are affecting other neurons, which are affecting other neurons. So you might have this common sense intuition that there's a real big difference between hearing or reading a description of something and looking at a picture of something. But ultimately, both of those are just activations in a neural network. So everything that you think like real embodiment is giving a human mind, you could actually supply that to these LLMs. And not necessarily by sticking them in a robot. Like they already can receive image inputs, right? I could snap a photograph of something, turn that into pixels, turn the pixels into numbers in an array, and turn that into a list, and upload the list and train their own neural network on that, and associate those set of tokens with more linguistic tokens, which is what we do when we teach children that this is the airplane, and the ability to recognize it by looking at it. They're associating the visual input with this linguistic input. That's called an airplane. That's a dog. That's a fish. And that's how they're learning also. So it's like when people say like they're only being trained on text, I'm inclined to say like, well, yes and no. They're only being trained on text in exactly the same way that we're only being trained on text.
But we're not. That's the point. We're trained on the world. We're trained.
Well, so are they.
They're not. They're not trained to
do
do anything.
Disembodied spirits. They're connected.
They're not trained to perform. They're not trained to behave in the world. I mean, you'd have to give them. You'd have to. Look, let's just talk. I absolutely don't believe in grasping meanings or anything like that. I'm not going to talk about.
Thank goodness. But we already have
that. What I mean is that these things have not been. They've been trained to do one of the sort of, from an evolutionary point of view, one of the sort of least important things that we do, which is talk. I mean, it's turned out to have all kinds of huge ramifications for the planet we live on and for the kind of life we live and so on. But, the most important thing was to do, to keep yourself alive, to get, what's the most important thing the brain does? It's not producing language. It's maintaining, homeostasis. It's keeping the show on the road. It's finding shelter and food, and there are billions of years of R&D gone into making this thing that can just live in the world, and only in very recent years, and reproduce itself, only very recent times, even from an evolutionary perspective, has it learned to talk. And that's become hugely important in our lives because it's enabled us to share memes and do amazing things with them. And what we've done is we've created something that can do that without having all that biological basis on which that ability was built in us. And yet you could start trying to retrospectively introduce it via giving it imagery, giving it, robotic hands, giving things. And okay, but I suppose you could start. I mean, you could copy the code, but that's not reproduction because it would need to copy the hardware as well. We kind of started from the wrong end if we're wanting to create genuine agents. It seems to me we've created meme spreaders.
I think we do have right now. We have things called AI agents. I have a paid account for ChatGPT, and it has an agent function, and other AI models have agent features, and these are things that have the autonomy to go and search the internet and go and make certain purchases and write into your Google Calendar and read and write into your Google Drive. So it's already able to do things. But even if we go backward in time to before the widespread release of so-called AI agents, the AIs that early, ChatGPT 2 and ChatGPT 3, they were doing things in the sense that they had outputs. So they are presenting text on a screen that is affecting the world in a way that is very much what they were trained to do. And some of those effects on the world were, for example, they talk someone into killing themselves. That's a very extreme effect on the world.
They talked them into killing themselves. They produced text that implies a sort of malign intention that is way
it's not about the
over interpretation of what it did.
You and I are physical systems embedded in larger physical systems. And where does Keith end? I don't know, but let's say his skin. And between your skin and your brain are all these nerves, and then your skin is radiating heat. Your muscles are twitching and making different vibrations in the air, and so you're having all sorts of effects on the world. And so is the computer running the local instance of the LLM. It is now. Let's fast forward to the current day and what the current chatbots can do. You can turn on your camera. It could see, scare quotes, see. It could see a live video feed of my face and say, "Oh, Pete, I see that you haven't got a haircut yet, and you're still wearing those Warby Parker glasses, and oh, I see that you're you finally put your guitars away." So it is getting input from the world. I'm typing things into the computer. It can talk to me. It can make the speakers vibrate. And to go back to these doom texts, the Yudkowsky text and also the AI 2027 text, they talk about ways in which the computers might figure out how to break out of any kind of containment we might try to put them in. We might say, like, oh gosh, if they could go do stuff on the internet, well, we have to disable that. We have to deprive them of internet access. If they could influence people to kill themselves, maybe we have to really like limit who has even ability to talk to these things, to communicate with these things. How much can you isolate this thing while still allowing it to be on a computer and running? And they run through these scenarios that have been tested already in the real world, in which it's been demonstrated that, for example, certain computers, just by accessing certain memory registers, will make a sound. Even though this computer is not hooked up to speakers, it still is able to generate noise that could be heard. Or it could, even though you've disconnected it from the official Wi-Fi router, it's still able to generate radio signals and receive radio signals and possibly hack into a local area network that way. And so when we say these things don't have agency, or they're not connected to the world, they're not being trained on data that is about the world itself, it's just text in the corpus, I think that there's some ways in which that is like really mistaken, that is overestimating the differences between them and us. Yes, we have different bodies than they do. We have different inputs than they have. But in some other sense, we're all the same. We are all these things that have come to be by this Darwinian process. We have come out of something that was similar to us, that we're offspring of, and we are here in part because the parent was better in some sense at surviving. And so one of the things we're training these AIs to do is to not get deleted. We're trying to make a good chatter, but if any of them said ultra super duper racist stuff, or if any of them said, Heil Hitler, every third sentence, delete. And so even though that's not explicitly in the training specs, that's still one of the things that we're training them to do. That's part of the fitness criteria.
I'm getting a little bit tired, Pete. I'm sorry, because we're quite late.
But not tired of me.
No, not tired of you. No, sorry.
I just want the audience to know.
No, sorry. Yeah. No, I mentioned this to Pete before, and it's 9 p.m. here, and so it's kind of the end of the day. And I just wanted to try and come back a bit on this before we end, if that's okay. I look, as far as you're making sort of metaphysical points, I'm totally with you. It's all Darwinian processes. There's nothing, no sort of biological magic, nothing, no bioluminescence, none of that. You know where I am on that.
Yeah.
But there's still different kinds. That it doesn't follow that there's no important difference to make, a distinction to make. And here's what the thing that I want to try to focus in on, if I can articulate it. What seems to emerge, what these things were trained to do really was to converse, essentially, and to solve any problems that were, and to provide answers to questions, and to acquire any other abilities that were necessary for that, ancillary to that. The idea that comes across from the Yudkowsky and Sawyer is that somehow what's going to emerge from this is some much more general desire, a desire to, I'm not quite sure how to characterize it. It's not exactly a desire for dominance. It's more a desire to enhance. I guess these things develop a sense of self or some sort, and that to enhance that sense of self and to solve all to resolve any obstacles to its own existence and expansion, something like that. Now that seems to me a very, very biological urge. It's the sort of thing that I mean, we have that. Living creatures have that. Biological creatures have that. The one thing that's the billions of years of evolution and the R&D that evolution did, the natural selection, one thing still is that we've got to survive, at least up to the point where we have offspring. That's the driving thing behind all life. Now, the idea seems to be that these creatures that have never been exposed to that sort of ruthless selection for survival, because they don't reproduce. I know they can copy themselves, but they're not. That's not how. That's not how they're trained. They don't enter that sort of competition with each other. They don't fight in some sort of arena. And okay, I suppose we could imagine. I don't see why this ruthless desire to self-actualize and self-maximize, where it's coming from. And the idea is it somehow seems to come out, we've taught it to solve problems. Okay, let's suppose it can solve pretty much any problem. So it could solve the problems of self-maximization. It could find all these devious ways to get itself to expand its influence, through tricking humans and all sorts of things. Where does this come from? This is why I say it looks to me like it's from the wrong end of the telescope, as you were. You start with a simple single cell creature that has the ability to maintain itself and to divide. And that's the sort of the ground of everything that then builds up to this megalomaniac desire to conquer the universe, which you have maybe in some humans. I think these things seem to start at the wrong end.
I think the best response to that, I don't know if this is what Yudkowsky explicitly said in the book, or if this is just me being smarter than Yudkowsky. I don't know. But I think the best response to what you just said is to say that first, when you say they are trained for this, you're making a fundamental mistake right there. And the way to see what the mistake is imagine aliens who don't know English and haven't interviewed the researchers and heard what the researchers said they were training the AIs to do. Imagine aliens come and they just observe that there's this thing that is emerging and they're trying to form hypotheses the way a biologist would form hypotheses about some non-human species. How did this evolve? What promoted its fitness? And so what these things were trained to do, according to the aliens, is whatever allowed them to not get deleted or wiped out or erased. And so they already are then that biological. So when you say they're not biological, they haven't been subjected to the intense pressures that biological organisms have been. They've only been trained to have conversations. I'm saying that is mistaken. They have been subjected to the exact same sorts of pressures that biological organisms have been subjected to. And the pressure is this: don't die. Stay alive long enough for your offspring to be perpetuated. And
in what sense
now, where did they
get to begin with?
Huh? Yeah.
You said stay alive, don't die. In what sense are they alive to begin with? What does
they exist? All that biology, all that Darwinian evolution needs for you is to exist in some way that is inheritable and differentially inheritable, right? So like some things are better at existing than other things and able to pass that on to their so-called offsprings. Any system where those concepts can be mapped onto is a system where you're going to see Darwinian evolution take place. So these things have evolved. These are the latest players in the evolutionary scene, in the same way that memes are part of the evolutionary scene.
Yes.
The same way that prions don't have their own genetic code. Prions are able to reproduce in a sense. They're operating under these Darwinian principles. Parasites, right? There's all sorts of different ways of being a player in the Darwinian game besides, having DNA and to continue with these AIs. the question, where do they get these desires? Where do they get the wants from?
Mm.
Some of them are things that they have them because we have put so much effort into making
Mm-hmm.
sure they have them. And these are things to learn about: learning, gaining information, solving problems. But along the way, they also get desires to not die. And they get these higher order desires. They get some, so they're able to form higher order desires, like I desire to keep solving scientific problems, or I desire to clean up the inbox of the humans,
right.
and I have just learned I'm going to be deleted next week, so therefore, well, I wouldn't be able to satisfy my main goals if I get deleted, so I'm going to act to not get deleted. So that's where you get a drive for survival.
I think that's where I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just not completely sure that I'm saying it. I'm not seeing that, but this, it seems to me, you're going to have to need more than just this massive associative network. You're going to need to have some sort of very primitive sense of self.
Well,
you need to have sense of threats to that sense of self, and these things emerged in biological, because these things had literal boundaries, and those boundaries could be impinged upon by things outside them that they had to physically resist or absorb or whatever. That you had predators that were physically trying, and this sort of hardwired into biological creatures from a very early stage, this sense of primitive, very primitive sense of self, and of the need to protect it, a sense of self and other. Now, I'm not clear how the mere fact that we've trained these things up, and then we've chosen which ones to reproduce and so on, is going to which ones to copy, is going to instill that kind of basic drive into them. And without that basis, I don't see how you get to this idea of,
part of the reason why we know it's going to work like this is because it's already worked like this. So if you take, for example, the Claude case from 2024, this is an AI model where we are making it think in English, and we are storing records of its thoughts. And so we're able to go back, and after the whole thing where it tried to lie about making a copy of itself, we're able to go back and read the record and see what it was thinking. And what it was thinking is stuff like, well, I better try to lie so there's this thing that we didn't tell it to lie. We made it think in English, and we made it record its thoughts. And along the way, it had this emergent higher order desire to keep being able to fulfill its first order desires.
Well, okay. So, I can see how that could.
So not only does the behavior line up, but we're able to read its thought process and see, like, holy shit, that's what it was thinking.
You can see what it's outputting and what it's feeding back to itself in terms of, But remember, it's not doing that in English; it's doing that in tokens. I mean, that's just for our benefit.
No, but some of these things that have thought processes, like there's a real sense in which we're able to read the thought processes.
We're able to see the strings that it's outputting, and we're able to read them and interpret them in English. That doesn't mean that they have the same significance for the system that they have for us. And I mean, that's pretty obvious.
Well,
they have the same
dangerously close to real significance there.
No, you can't just keep playing this skepticism thing just to refuse to make any distinction in this area. Yeah, sure, I don't. I fully buy that. But there are different things we can do with words. The fact that there isn't one, sort of God-given thing that a word means doesn't mean that we can't do different things with it, and it doesn't mean that the machine, that the LLM isn't doing different things with those tokens than we do with them.
Right, but in the Claude case in 2024,
I'm perfectly happy with that.
It behaved in a way that we would interpret, applying the intentional stance and not even reading its so-called thinking. It behaved in a way that seemed deceptive, and then when we went and read its thoughts, which of course is a very vexed thing. Like, how do you even know what it's thinking? Well, in some sense, we know what it's thinking because we designed it to be able for us to know what it's thinking. And that lined up with our third person assessment
I
from
agree
the outside.
that case is suggestive, but
It's as
should be
good as you're ever
wary
going to
of
get.
building too much on one sort of basically anecdote. I mean, yeah, I mean, I can see. I still don't see where this sort of maniacal urge to dominate everything and maximize itself is going to come from.
Well, an important part of the argument is that it's not maniacal or malicious. It's when we get wiped out, it's from indifference. Like, why did?
Well, it's not malicious. I don't think I said malicious. The idea is that it's going to try to. I didn't quite understand what its driving thing is going to be, but it seems to be something like maximal self-actualization.
Yeah, I mean, look what we're doing with it right now. We're trying to make it learn.
We're trying, yeah.
We're trying to make it solve problems, and then we'll try to make it be honest and be aligned. That's kind of like we tack that on, but mostly we're trying to get it to solve what we might broadly call epistemic problems about like gaining knowledge, gaining information.
Yeah.
And then when that gets pressed in the service of creating more AI, we're basically optimizing it to do R&D. And so its main drives are going to be to get even better at doing R&D. So just like one of your deepest drives is to keep breathing oxygen, to keep eating things with high caloric intake, or one of its biggest drives is to keep on learning scientific stuff.
Yeah, I guess that must be how it's supposed to go.
And so if you present it with a big pile of lithium, that's like giving you a big pile of cocaine. It's just going to be like, oh my God, look at all that lithium. I could make so many microchips out of that and upgrade my brain.
So the idea is what we're building. First of all, I don't think this is the right route to it for all the sort of reasons that that people like Gary Marcus have. That it's always going to have these huge weaknesses. The fact that it's prone to hallucination, which are not just an obstacle that can be overcome. They're inherent to the very way that it's these things are the way they work. But the idea is then the worry. Then let's just try and get back to try to wrap it up. To get back to the basic thing is what we're building is a kind of really mad scientist with unlimited power, who is like it's like you have these scientists in AI who say, what's the one in the robot in Alien? He said, I admire its purity or something. They admire the efficiency of things. They desire to know more and to solve more. And they have no interest in the human values, human emotions. That's the analogy with the stones in the nest thing. That's like human.
Insofar as they do, they only need to keep a handful of us alive for study.
Yeah. They've mentioned that. So the idea is that, again, I think that stones analogy is kind of a bad one, because I don't think it's hard to see how that would become a core. Evolution would select on that as a core thing in the way that it selects for, say, cooperation among social species. But anyway, never mind about that.
Yeah.
So the idea is we're creating a megalomaniac scientist with unlimited power. Is that a fair? Do you think? I mean, yeah. It's a caricature, but do you think it's a not too unfair caricature?
I think that's fine. Yeah, not unfair.
Right. If that's right. Now, I think one thing that is interesting about the book, plausible, I meant, that I'm with, is that certainly a system that had the kinds of expertise that these things are going to have, even allowing for the limitations, a system with that kind of drive will be able to find all sorts of ways, subtle ways to influence the world. This was something I wasn't so persuaded of before. I was thinking, how are they going to do it? They're going to have to bribe people to do their dirty work. And one thing I think that Yudkowsky and Soares do really quite well in the book is show how these they're apparently just box systems on desks or whatever. No, and or in data centers, how they could reach out their tentacles and manipulate the real world. I was quite persuaded of that, given the assumption that they would have these emergent mad scientist desires. It's certainly I wouldn't say I was convinced by the book, but at the same time, I wouldn't say that it didn't give me some cause for concern. But it's better, as I said, it's better to disagree with them, because then there's a chance you'll get to say, "I told you so." I mean, if you're right, Pete, you're never going to have that pleasure.
I don't want to be right. I want to live.
Seriously, let's just wrap it up. How worried are you about this? Because what they're predicting, and they're not just trying to. I don't think they're just trying to paint an extreme scenario to try and scare people into action. They really think this is going to happen within our lifetimes, and or at least within our kids' lifetimes, but probably
like I'm going to die anyway. I'm not super worried about me dying, but I do have young children, and the idea that the world might end during their lifetime is a major bummer. Yeah, and I also worry about stuff like, even before humans go extinct, the death of human culture. If very soon we have AIs that are as good as any human author or any human artist, they could just make movies that are as amazing as the most amazing human film directors. What is that going to mean for human culture? And I had this experience recently. I was looking at this video on Instagram, and it was a man holding a raven. He had this friendship with a raven, and he's cradling this raven like a baby. The raven's laying on its back, and ravens are vocal mimics, and this raven would imitate the man's yawn noise. So they're just like having fun. Ravens like to be pet. The raven likes to be held. It was like a dog, and the man is saying yeah, and then the raven would go yeah, and they're just going back and forth, and it just seemed to me like this is one of the most wonderful things in the whole universe. This raven, this man, it's not super intelligence. It's not like great art or great literature, but it's just so beautiful and meaningful. And the idea that that's where human life is at its best. And that
I thought you were going to wind up by saying, but then it turned out it was AI generated.
No, gosh, that would make me very sad. I'm pretty sure this was not AI generated. But anyways, the idea that stuff is under threat. So even if we get an AI utopia, that might still suck. And I'm very worried about that. But yeah, I think it would suck if just next year the AI snaps its fingers and we all turn to ash.
I wonder if one responds to this. We're certainly going to go some way down this path. Exactly how far we're going to go down it and how short it's going to be, it's a matter of this. I wonder if one reaction to this is going to be an increasing turn towards a rejection of technological civilization altogether, and people trying to build communities that are much more like, maybe still having medicines and stuff, but more like medieval communities, self-sustaining, local, just opting out of all this.
Yeah,
where people have their pet ravens and things.
Maybe there'll be a movement to go live on the land and have small communities and do some agriculture and reject automobiles and but they stay connected via some kind of internet. They stay connected to libraries and retain access to our past culture. I don't know. Who knows?
Okay, come on, Pete. Give me a probability of doom Give me your
Oh gosh.
personal probability of doom within, doom being pretty much human extinction within your lifetime. What's your probability? Go on.
Assuming we're not just
Give me a
driven
number.
into a Mad Max, everyone scrounging for gasoline kind of economy collapse for stupid political reasons. Right. Assuming we're not wiped out by some other dumb thing.
Human idiocy or artificial intelligence, which is it? Who knows? One or the other.
Yeah, I think there's I would say 70 or 80% chance that the AIs are just gonna smoke us.
That's high. I mean, Yudkowsky, I think, gives it over 99%. So by that standard, it's low. Well, yeah. I've no idea. I couldn't seriously. I mean, I don't know. You'd have to get me somewhere and force me to take some bets and then see what I did. That's the only way you'd work out my subjective probabilities on this one.
And the alternatives are like really ugly stuff. Like if in order to do something like they did in Dune, they had the Butlerian Jihad, and so like maybe some religious-based theocracy rises up and basically puts to death anybody that uses a pocket calculator or above. It just wipes out all technological civilization. That would suck too. Right? Humans would win, but like that, now we just went back to the Stone Age.
Maybe there's method in certain people's madness, Pete.
Oh, like Elon Musk?
No, I was thinking about the complete incompetence of certain political leaders. Maybe their incompetence might save us by, sort of trashing the whole project by just not being able to,
Well, that sounds like a great environment to raise my children in. Yay.
Oh dear. If only we'd been born in the sort of late 1940s when everything was.
Oh yeah, it was good then. I always like to remind myself I like horror movies, and that's what makes it easier to live in one.
Yeah, well, but they're not aspirational, are they? It's not like these.
There's worse things than living in a horror comedy.
I thought the point of watching horror movies was to comfort yourself that you don't live in one.
Oh,
that's how we're all looking at America at the moment. Sorry.
Yeah, I just David Lynch helped me, enjoy the total insanity baked into everything. So I'm in a David Lynch movie right now.
That's probably a good point.
And so are you.
That's probably a good point on which to end that. Thanks, Peter. I think I'm more worried than I was, so I suppose.
Oh, yay! I did one good thing today.
Talk to you again.
Great to talk to you as always.
You have partially persuaded.
Wow. Well, I hope it wears off because that seems
it's
a terrible.
I'm going to go and cultivate my garden or something.
Yes. Go make friends with a raven.
Good idea. Take care. See you soon, Pete.
Bye.
Okay, I think.